let me go ahead and introduce our friends from McDonald's. And actually, if you could join me in welcoming Beth Phillips, Pawola, and Sneha Jain. Beth, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, I'm Beth Phillips. I have been at McDonald's for just under 2 years. Formerly, I worked in advertising in Chicago, and McDonald's was my client. And I'm responsible for deploying Sprinklr to our markets.
Thanks, Beth. Jeff?
Pawola. Similar to Beth, I come from an agency background, so we actually worked at the same agency prior to McDonald's. With Sprinklr, I manage our business relationships, so really setting our roadmap. What are we hoping to accomplish across the system?
And Sneha.
Hey, I'm Sneha. I do the global social data analytics for McDonald's. Again, I've been with McDonald's for close to 2 years. I come from a consulting background. My last clients were Microsoft, Southwest Airlines.
Thanks for introducing all of us to you. So again, we're going to talk about how to build global social momentum at scale. And the way we're going to do that is through our agenda here that we're going to cover over the next 30 plus minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A. So make sure that you think of some, and I'll be the mic runner, come out, make sure we can cover your questions. First, we're going to start by Jeff talking about the state of social at McDonald's before and after. What did they used to be? Where are they now? And then, more importantly, the how. How did they get there? The process that they took, which they took was a crawl, walk, run strategy. Beth's going to take you all through what that strategy means, how they brought that to life, go through crawl and walk. We'll have Sneha finish up with how there are certain markets, certain parts of the organization that are running in terms of social, also the results that they've found, and then we'll make sure we come back to each of you for one lesson that you've learned during the process. Now, before I get started, I'm kind of hungry. Is anyone else hungry? Now, can you all keep a secret? Is the door closed? Can you all make sure not to tell anybody what we do right now? Can we have a little, this is in between us? Yeah. You want some all-day breakfast? Does anybody want some all-day breakfast? Can you cue the music, Beth? All right, let's get some all-day breakfast, everybody. Let's get some all-day breakfast. We got sausage biscuits. We got egg McMuffins. Feel free to grab some all-day breakfast. If you're Jewish like me, I got some matzah if you want it later. Take a picture. Hashtag I'm loving it. Hashtag on Enterprise. Enjoy. Also, on your way out, another little special thing. You're all getting $10 gift certificates thanks to McDonald's, so make sure you got yours on the way out. All right, let's turn the music down. That was more fun than I thought it would be, so thank you for indulging us. And with that, let me hand it off to you, Jeff, to take us through the before and after state, and let's get into the deck. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like this is Oprah's finest things. We just kind of gave you everything you wanted. So, but seriously, so before we kind of get into, like we're talking about, the state of our social media management currently, it's important to take a look back at how we got here. So as you heard, Sneha, Beth, and I, we all started in summer of 2015, so about 2 years. And before that time, there wasn't, so I guess first, we're all in the global team. So when you think of McDonald's, we're in 120 different markets, and each market has their own priorities, their own goals, their own objectives, and as a result, their own marketing channels as well. So when you think about social media, prior to us joining the organization in 2015, there was really no set guidelines, procedures, really any brand voice or personality that we wanted to portray on our social channels. So when you think about social and how it started in 2003, 2005 approximately, that's about 10 to 12 years of social media that was just unaccounted for at our organization. And it was really handled and managed at a local level. So when we joined the organization in 2015, we really wanted to start to set, how do we want to be portrayed as a brand across McDonald's? So the thing that I like to point out is, anywhere you go in the globe, McDonald's is consistent. So whenever you go to a McDonald's, you're going to find a Big Mac. You're going to find chicken McNuggets. You're going to find our world famous fries. Unfortunately, over those 10 to 12 years, we created some bad practices and really had just an inconsistent voice and presence across the globe. So what you see up here, we have, like I said, so we're in 120 different countries. Since this was created, we've gone into another market, Kazakhstan, actually. So we're in 120 different countries across almost 20 different social channels, 28,000 different accounts, and we're, again, using almost 30 different tools across the organization. So all that to say is it was, we didn't really know what we were doing. There was just a whole bunch of different silos, as we talked about in the sessions this morning. There's a lot of different silos. We really wanted to try and put those together a little bit more to make sure that we were speaking a little bit more consistency. So with all that in mind, you can go to the next slide. So with all that in mind, we really were seeking a social software management provider that could really help answer all those questions and really help answer all those pain points that we experience. So when you go across the board, there's kind of the table stakes that we have. So it's publish content, listen to consumers, answer questions. Those are kind of like the table stakes engagement that we talk about. So how can we more consistently engage with our customers in a manner that is representative of the brand at scale? So instead of being one market speaking to one customer, we're really a global brand talking in the same voice, talking in the same manner, and really answering our customers in an appropriate fashion. And then there's some other things that Sprinklr provides, and we'll get into kind of the crawl, walk, run, and how we've started to roll this out at scale. But there's McDonald's has its fair share of issues or crises that come with our brand. So we wanted to make sure that we could have that 24/7 listening to make sure that we were constantly listening to our customers and really being aware of what they were talking about, so we could first understand if there are issues and correct them. And second, if something's going right, we can take what's going right and apply it at scale. So that's what's really nice about McDonald's is we're in 120 different markets. So if something is going well in one market, we wanted a solution that could help us understand that was going well and then take that and apply it into other markets. So at our best, we're 120 different test and learns where we can really learn from one another. At our worst, we don't talk to each other, we don't learn from each other, and we really don't take advantage of our scale in a positive way. So in 2015, like I said, when we all started, we wanted to kind of clear that slate. And through all that, we conducted an RFP. Like I said, we had about 30 different solution providers that we were working with, and we ultimately went with Sprinklr. And the reason why we went with Sprinklr, from my perspective, is when you think about all our markets, there's varying levels of maturity. So there's the United States, which is one of our more mature markets. So they really want all the bells and whistles that Sprinklr can offer. Whereas there's some less mature markets that social. They're new to social. They were one individual within a marketing organization that didn't know, how you could really leverage social at scale and make an impact and connect with your customers. So we really wanted to make sure that the solution that we selected offered, an ability for our mature markets to really make sure that they could customize and get as much as they wanted. But at the same time, we wanted to be as, we could dumb it down, essentially. So we wanted to build custom environments where all of our markets could really take advantage based on their level of maturity at the time. So we can go to the next slide. So with that in mind, we selected Sprinklr, and what you see here is actually our digital hub within our Oak Brook offices. And what we like to point out with this, or what I like to point out, is the hub is more, it's not just a bunch of screens. It's not just it's not just data visualization. It's really an area of the business where we learn about and listen to our customers. We build advocacy programs and campaigns. So the whole point of this is to kind of visualize that, so our community managers and our teams that are working within these spaces have the ability to create their content in a manner that's going to be more appropriate for our customers, excuse me. You can go to the next slide. And then this is the current iteration of our command center screen within Oak Brook. And we're starting to roll this out globally, which Sneha will talk about in a little bit. But essentially what you're looking at here is it's not just data visualization for the fact to put data on the screen. When we first started with Sprinklr in December of 2015 with our RFP and selected them, we knew that this was a priority for us. But we had to work to get there. And when we started, it was very much data just for data's sake. We updated about once a week, really kind of key learnings, what was happening within our organization. But since then, we've really pivoted and taken advantage of this technology that they offer to make sure that every screen is a unique story. So right now, if you see at the top left, it says, how are our channels performing? So what this screen will do is it will take us through each of our individual markets and highlight exactly how their content is performing based on a certain set of KPIs and ROIs that we've established. So that way we can constantly monitor and understand how we're performing and connecting with our customers. So this was really important for us because we wanted to make sure that, again, one brand, one voice, consistently making sure that we're performing at our optimal level across the board. So with that, I'll pass it over to Beth, who will take us to the next part.
Thanks, Jeff. So we're going to talk a little bit about crawl, walk, run, and I think it's important to define those first. So the company like McDonald's, we are huge. Jeff just took you through a few of the stats, but we're going to walk you through it from a global perspective. So the three of us sit on the global team. We look after larger themes within our organization, not necessarily what an individual market, how they perform, or what they're doing on a market-by-market basis. So it is important to note that for each market, we have varying levels of maturity. Some markets are crawling, others are running and pushing us places. So Brad, if you move us forward. Jeff outlined that in 2015, we did an RFP of social tools, and we declared Sprinklr our global tool of record for the social system. From there, we really had to establish a foundation of what that meant for our markets. So this walks you through the timeline of 2015, 2016, and how we took different components of Sprinklr and put them at different levels of importance for us and where we were within that maturity model. So walking through the timeline of the quarters, I won't go in detail for you, but you can, yes, take pictures of it or look in more detail. The most valuable part for me, because it has to do with my job, but what I'll focus on in walking you through this is the way that we deployed Sprinklr to the globe for McDonald's for our system. So we had to develop an onboarding process, and then we had to deploy that process out through the system as a highly segregated company at a highly, I guess, just unaligned, disaligned point for most of where our peers and coworkers fall. I love this slide. I love this slide. So currently, we are in 42 of our markets within the McDonald's system, and I view that as a huge victory for our team. So within, I could say 120, Beth, that's not a huge number, but for what that means and the relationships that we've built for each of those markets, that's huge. When we began this process, we didn't know who our contacts were in some of the markets. So we were literally going out, establishing relationships, building credibility, and showing them what a tool like Sprinklr can do for them, how it can better their own system, streamline their processes, and work to hit basically their KPIs. So show your leadership what you can do. Prove to them the power of social. So through this process, Sprinklr has allowed us to create those relationships with our different markets. And we've been able to add on to the kind of core modules of Sprinklr that we primarily use with our different markets, the premium modules or even campaigns. You think about, we have Euro Cup or Olympics. Now we know who to work with, and now we know what tool to use when we do those types of campaigns. I think it's also worth calling out that we have a customized approach for each of those markets. So all 42, we make sure that we are hitting from a global perspective the way that we do reporting and measurement, but also that their own specifics are not lost. So every market, I don't know if you've traveled and had the opportunity to try McDonald's in a different market, but they have different products in many of them. They have different campaigns. They have local initiatives. We want to make sure that those are also being captured and that the tool is not just working for the global team, but it's working for the market team. So going a little bit in more depth, I'm going to walk you through this crawl phase for our team and what the tactical approach was for us to create the relationships and really deploy Sprinklr to all 42 of those markets. I spoke a little bit to, we have this hierarchy of knowledge. So we have global priorities, we have market priorities. If you think about your Sprinklr environment, we have a partner, we have clients. We have layers of data that are leveled in with that. So we created a templated approach that could be used for every single market. It sounds complex, but it's very basic. So markets think that they're getting, and they are getting, this one-to-one, we see you as Sweden, we understand as Sweden what your needs are, and we're meeting those. But in the background, we're also meeting our global initiatives and priorities by making sure that Sweden is laddered up to Germany, who's laddered up to Spain, so we can view that from a more broad theme as a holistic approach. So we basically took this templated process. We ensured that our training was consistent across the board so that if a market is running on social, say a US or an Australia, they have the most advanced portions of the tool that it can give them. Their training is up to speed for community managers, for agencies that may be publishing, for their data analysts, but also for some of our earlier or our less mature markets, maybe our Kazakhstan, our 120, we will call them, as they're maybe just creating their first ever social team. We can make sure that their needs are being met. So we're not talking with a lot of jargon. We're making sure it's simple. They may not know what modules are, what social listening is, so we can walk them through that in a way that's cohesive, and again, our system is aligned. Moving on to the walk phase, we transitioned from this deployment, which we're still doing with many of our markets, into what I refer to as Sprinklr optimization. And Sprinklr optimization is tracking adoption metrics for the markets. So we can track, I don't know if you do this within your own Sprinklr environment, but you can track numbers across your partner as well as within your client environments for engagement rates as well as login counts. So we created a systematic approach to track those different sets of metrics from, again, partner and client. So we went through and we did training with every single market where we educated them on why adoption of a tool is important and what that actually means. So how do they look at a reporting dashboard that monitors their community managers, and how do they use it well? Part of the goal in that was to give them some of the onus, right? It only means so much if as global we're saying, use this tool, it's great, continue doing, work through it. It only means a certain amount. As soon as the market on their own also believes in the power, they see it, and they push their teams to use it more, that's where really the benefits can lie. So we did it on a market-by-market basis again. So we had calls, we educated them, and we began to publish reports showing them what those adoption metrics were. And we create KPIs for each individual market, and we track how they're growing. It may be that they have very low adoption, and all we want is for their percentages to increase. It may not be you have to be at 100% all the time. But again, as I spoke to at the beginning, crawl, walk, run means different things for different people. So we have to be in a space where we remember that within the McDonald's system. I'm going to pass it over to Sneha to talk about running.
Thanks, Beth. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. I can't believe I used pivot. But I'll talk about run in terms of big wins that we have had. There's obviously a next phase of run, which is fast running or sprinting. But just to give you a little bit of context, last year, January sometime, our CEO, Steve Easterbrook, came to the social team and said, like, hey, I want to just know what people are talking about in social. My customers are on social. They're saying all sorts of things. I just want to see what the sentiment is, what's going on. Just help me understand social. So we started having these bi-weekly, sometimes weekly meetings, and he was very specific that he wanted it to be in person. It's not a report that you send out. He really wanted to have a conversation and learn about social. So we set up these weekly and bi-weekly meetings with him where we just talked about customer insights. We started breaking them down into different buckets. So McDonald's gets 5 million mentions in a month across different languages from different markets. So it's a lot of information to process and get exactly what people are talking about. So it was a journey since last year. We started by using different capabilities of Sprinklr. So we had Command Center, So the first few minutes will go, okay, what has happened in the last 24 hours in the last week that he needs to know about? And Command Center visualization helped us convey it in a very simple and easy to understand manner. So things like, what are customers saying? What are we saying? Are they aligning? What are competitors saying? What are the general trends that people are talking about in social media? If people are talking about green or sustainability, some in the last 24 hours, is there something we can do to capitalize on it? So a lot of time we'll spend on that, but we really got a good push from our leadership to adapt social and make sure everyone is using it. We did do deep dives into our initiatives like Experience of the Future. We are doing delivery pilots in Florida. But the idea is to understand what are my macro big trends, but what are my micro trends too? What are the concerns of people that only few people are talking about, and how can we address that in our narrative, right? How can we make sure that we have an answer if someone is asking that question to us? The other thing that I want to touch upon briefly is sharing of content across the board. So McDonald's, as you know, we have different silos. Nothing was connected. If there's a Big Mac picture, it's been taken 85 times because there are 85 different markets and agencies working. So there was a lot of repetition, a lot of cost that is not very optimized. Rolling out one platform across the board helped make us that process so much easy. We have global campaigns like Olympics. Just have one board. You can post all your content. Someone in Italy can use it. If Japan, and actually this happened, Japan launched a product. It's called McChoco fries. It has fries with chocolate on it. Sounds really good. But they did that, and the content was available, and our corporate or global channels use it to just amplify it, and people in US lost their shit. But that's another example of how content sharing becomes so easy, because otherwise it's, hey, emailing, can you share that asset? How do we do it? A lot of process, but now we have the streamlined process of doing that, which is very, very beneficial to us. With all the premium modules, I do the data. So, okay, we perform great. What are our competitors doing? How are customers behaving around the competitors, Starbucks, Chipotle? Everyone wants to know about it. And one of the modules that we, I think is really, really important is the benchmarking module, because you are monitoring your competitors across the globe. Canada has a different set. I have a different set. So it's just not based on volume, but something that's relevant to a market too. So we started using these premium modules. We are trying to use more and more image analytics, right? Especially in the case of Ronald. When you see this positive sentiment, you have a mom who's posting a picture of her kid having a Happy Meal, or with the Ronald statue, right? So these are not just text conversation, but these are just emotions, just to understand what is the bond you have with Ronald. How do people perceive Ronald right now as? And then just being a very family-oriented brand, it becomes really, really important for us to understand the sentiment and the emotional connection with our brand. The third thing that I really want to touch about is, and I know Jeff touched about it a little bit, is command center. So during the crawl and the walk phase, when we were designing everything, we made sure we had the vision that it's created so that it can be a plug-and-play module, right? Plug-and-play framework. So we have this global set, and we have market sets, right? So the listening data framework is aligned to that. The command center is aligned to that. The build that you have is aligned to that. So everything is connected in the same way. So we have this global build in Chicago, London, Singapore. We call these our hubs. But if Italy comes and says, hey, I need the same setup in my market, you can just filter it down for Italy, right? It's very simple to use. But I think it was really helpful because it made us deploy our platform so fast. It was easy to use. We, as a global team, can monitor everything, but the markets can see only their portion of it. If you go to the next slide. So some of the results, what we have learned in the last 2 years. One biggest one, obviously, is the cost saving. We have so many agencies. We have agency doing advocacy. We have an agency who will be doing the Olympics campaign. We have an agency who will be delivering insights on experience of the future, right? And everyone is using their own platform. There might be marketing, which is doing the exact same thing as operations. But just having one platform and onboarding the entire company onto it, it helped us break that down. Because if someone is using some insights on delivery, it's available across the board. Everyone can access it. You don't have to hire an agency to do that. The second big result was revenue. And when you talk about revenue, I think revenue in social is not only dollar value. It's all about controlling your negative sentiment and turning it into positive, right? That's your revenue. You address the negative and make your customers your advocates. And that's the biggest ROI from social. You are creating that positive buzz. Through the way it's set up, we do prioritize our engagements with our customers. So if we see people who are talking negative things, we have detractors, cues, we prioritize in a way so that we can estimate what's the maximum impact of a negative tweet, and we address this first. So we have certain ways of measuring, how many people were detractors, have turned into advocates, how many were neutral, how many have turned into advocates. So you're really able to see where is your customer moving. If it's not moving, then you're not creating an impact. So I think one of the results of having this system, which is all connected, is to measure it and finally see what's the result. The last one is de-risking. So we as McDonald's, all of you know, everyone likes to talk about McDonald's. There are so many articles. Set it on your Google Trends, you will understand what it means. But you have so many articles, issues coming out every day. If someone says, hey, I got a needle in my burger, we have those workflows, and we have listening set up in a way that it can be escalated through the system really fast. So if an app was, sorry.
That didn't happen, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an example.
Yeah.
But if the app was hacked, let's say in India, right? That is escalated if it's caught in global or if it's caught in China or anywhere, right? You can share it with your market. Even if you don't get it, you can immediately escalate it. We make sure we have those prioritizations set up so that we are always on listening, again, for macro, micro trends. If we have any threat from a competitor perspective, we are always monitoring it to make sure that we respond to it whenever necessary and if it's required. So I would like to wrap it up with lessons learned, one big from each of us. So Jeff.
Sure. So we talked about this a little bit in terms of varying levels of maturity for our markets. So when we ultimately selected Sprinklr, what was very important to us was being able to have a sophisticated tool that was for our markets that had this level of capability, advanced level of capability within social. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we could provide something that was easy to use for our less mature markets. So ultimately, I think the ability to customize your environments to your markets or your brands or whatever the case may be is an important quality that we really valued with Sprinklr, and I think it's really been successful to this date.
My primary lesson learned is that technology adoption takes time. We'd like to turn on a switch, have it done, but to really have technology adoption be successful, your human processes have to also change. When you come to work, what do you do when you turn on your computer? That changes, and it looks different. So things are slow, hopefully slow and steady, but you have to be patient with the way that it all works.
My learning was build an ecosystem, not a capability. I might be doing a project, and Beth will do a project this year, but next year we'll just spend to connect it. So think about it before you do that. Yeah.